The Vietnam conflict was one of the longest, bloodiest struggles of the Cold War era. How did it start? And how long did it last? What most people call the Vietnam War began in 1946, and at the time was known as the Indochina War. French forces fought against rebelling forces known as the Viet Minh. The two sides fought for nearly 10 years, and the end result was the creation of two nations, North Vietnam and South Vietnam. North Vietnam was led by its founder, Ho Chi Minh, who desired to gain control of the entire former French colony and institute communism nationwide. South Vietnam, under Ngo Dinh Diem, had established a republic. In 1959, North Vietnam, aided by the Soviet Union, attacked South Vietnam. The United States saw this as a Soviet effort to expand communism, and throughout the early 1960s sent soldiers to South Vietnam in the form of advisors to assist the training of South Vietnamese forces. By 1963, 16,000 Americans were stationed in Southeast Asia. In August of 1964, 2 American ships were reportedly fired upon in the Gulf of Tonkin. This resulted in the U.S. Congress passing the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, which gave President Lyndon Johnson authority to conduct military operations in Vietnam in order to protect U.S. personnel. The first American combat troops arrived in Vietnam in 1965. Throughout South Vietnam, North Vietnamese supporters, known as the Viet Cong, fought a guerrilla war against U.S. and South Vietnamese troops. A guerrilla war is one in which hit-and-run tactics are used in order to avoid a direct military confrontation. The North Vietnamese Army also engaged in a more traditional, drawn-out war against American forces. U.S. involvement in Vietnam reached its peak with a Viet Cong attack known as the Tet Offensive. It's known by this name because it occurred during the Vietnamese holiday known as Tet. The Vietnam conflict was widely covered by the American media, and the effectiveness of the well-organized Tet Offensive by enemy forces greatly damaged public support for U.S. involvement in the conflict. Following this incident, the U.S. began the process of Vietnamization. This meant gradually turning the war over to the South Vietnamese as U.S. soldiers were slowly withdrawn. The fighting officially stopped in January of 1973 with the signing of the Paris Peace Accords. Once U.S. forces were completely withdrawn, the North Vietnamese resumed their attacks, and Vietnam was reunited as a communist nation, which it still remains today. Throughout the Vietnam conflict, well over 1 million Vietnamese died, and 58,000 American soldiers also lost their lives.